Welcome to the Redirect Podcast. My name is Abigail Humans.
And I'm Emily Rojas. The Redirect Podcast is a show where we shift the conversation back to books. We discuss themes from some of our favorite fictional books and how those themes show up in real lived experiences.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing dystopian books, where they came from, why they're so popular, and which books in the genre are our favorites.
But first, if you've been enjoying this podcast, we'd like to humbly ask that you support us in a few simple ways. First, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and just let us know that you're loving the show.
We'd also love for you to follow us on Instagram at Redirect Podcast. And finally, if you really, really like the show, we'd love for you to share it with a friend. Thanks so much. And now, let's talk about dystopians.
Okay, let's talk about dystopians.
But I guess before we talk about dystopians,
Yes.
Emily, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, as we talk, it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, no work. And so I'm feeling awesome. And I'm about to actually head on a little vacation to Mexico next week. So I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. A lot of great things on the horizon. What about you?
The best thing, good. I'm feeling great. My day has been good. I went for a hike.
Nice.
I went to a coffee shop this morning and had a latte and worked on the outline for this episode.
Nice.
And I've actually, I'm looking forward to the 4-day work week, but at the same time, I have to travel for work this week, and I have a lot of work to do, and I feel like I lost a day. So I'm feeling a little stressed about the 4-day work week, but that's okay. Still taking this day to rest. And I'm feeling good. How is your your year kicked off reading wise? Like, are you on a strong start?
Yeah,
Week start?
I'll circle back to this topic when we talk about what we've been reading lately, but I feel like I'm on a weak start and not just like the vibes. I wasn't feeling like reading. So I've been reading a lot of books that aren't necessarily good, but they are like the page turners. I've been reading a lot of like short thriller mystery books just because I felt like that's what I needed to like get into the reading. But I'm starting to feel more like we're reading right now Spare for our next episode, which we'll tell you a little bit more about in a second, I guess. But so reading that, and I got a good audiobook, so I feel like I'm getting back into it. But I feel like the first couple weeks of the year I was kind of like dragging my feet with reading. How about you?
Yeah. I've been off to a strong start,
Nice.
actually. I've just had a few things that I've really liked, like one after the other. And it also helps that I got a bunch of books that came off of hold at the library at the same time. And I felt like I really had to hustle to finish those because I felt like it was like an onslaught. So that's how it goes with Libby. For any listeners that are avid Libby users, Libby users, you can relate to the feeling of having books on hold for literally months, and then all of a sudden they all come off hold for at the same time for no reason at all.
No, literally, it's like they do it on purpose to antagonize you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Spare, a book that we're both reading. So before we get into the conversation of today's episode, we just wanted to let you all know that our next episode will be a book club episode on Prince Harry's Spare. So that episode will be dropping on February 7th. So if you want to finish the book before, just so that you can be spoiler free for the episode, here's your advance warning to do so. You've got a good 2 weeks to do that. Or if you're okay with being spoiled, that's great. And if you have any questions or topics you want us to hit on, then please DM us on Instagram at Redirect Podcast. As we're creating the outline for the show, if you've read it or if you started, you know that it covers a lot and it's really long and there's so many topics all over the place. So we'd really love to know what you want to hear about specifically.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll probably just talk about whatever we want to.
And I'll say, obviously, I'm not done with it yet, but I feel like if you're just seeing what's on Twitter or TikTok, you are not getting the full story of this book. So definitely, if you're not going to read it, at least tune in and hear us talk about it, because I think, like Abigail said, it's quite long. So there's a lot more that you're missing, I think, if you're just getting those, quick highlights you're seeing on social
media. The grabby stuff that's on social media, it's like a 20th of the book.
If that.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's a few sentences here or there. It's
there's so much more.
And not that the whole book is tea, but it's really interesting, good, long, dense. So anyways, let us know what you want to hear about and what you want us to talk about.
All right.
And with that,
let's transition. Dystopians. So, Abigail, what is dystopian literature? Tell us.
Yes. Okay. So the opposite of dystopia is a utopia. And so that's easier to picture what a utopia might be like. So if you picture the inverse of that, that is a dystopia. So these are books that are almost always set in the future, and therefore they are speculative fiction about what could happen in the future, usually if we like continue on our course of events. Like they're usually having a little bit of commentary about something that's going on in today's culture and world, and playing out what might happen if that continued on in the same trajectory. So I think it does go to like it does have something to say that there's no like I can't think of a single future set fiction book that's about a utopia, except for maybe like maybe like a chapter of the Bible. I don't know.
Maybe. But I think the thing is, like, something perfect is so unreal that you can't imagine a perfect society. So even,
Totally.
there has to be something wrong with even the most perfect societies. So I think that, like, that is impossible to imagine just as a human being. Like, and also that would be a really boring book, to be fair. Like, and everything was great and
Yeah,
we all got along
exactly.
harmoniously.
There would be no problem. So the main characters of the dystopian literature, of dystopian books, are usually battling one of the following: environmental ruin, government control, some sort of religious or like sectorial control, corporate control, or some sort of like technical or biological threat is usually an indicator that you're reading a dystopian book. So, Emily, can you give us a brief history of
Yes.
dystopian literature?
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to put some links in our show notes of some of the articles I read for this because there are actually a lot of articles and research papers even about dystopian novels and especially YA dystopians. So, some interesting reading, if you're interested in continuing this conversation. But from what I read, the genre kind of began as we know it in the 1920s in Russia, and it was invented kind of by an author named Yevgeny Zamyatin. And his novel, which is
Killed it.
called, thank you, is called We in 1924. And it was kind of imagining a future under an authoritarian regime. And it was very like suppressed and outlawed in the Soviet Union, in Russia at the time. And because it was kind of like a veiled, not so veiled critique of the regime and of the Soviet Union. And so I think that's kind of interesting that its origins came from a time and place of, significant oppression and government overreach and things like that. Because I think something we've seen and we can talk about more later is like the petering out as the world becomes more dystopian. But I think the genre as a whole also comes from, kind of like you said in the beginning, a critique of these kind of regimes or a critique of society as a whole, and what would happen if we continued on this path.
Hmm.
And so then in 1984, George, or not in 1984, but the novel 1984 by George Orwell kind of is also what we think about in the modern era, kind of more of a transition, but still the same kind of thing: critique of government, critique of society. And that's a book that obviously has lasted decades and is still relevant today. So I think that's also a component of dystopian because it's imagining a distant future. Obviously, 1984 is the past at this point, but it is imagining a future. They kind of stay relevant longer because you can always kind of, hopefully we never get to the point of some of these. And so then the question is like, why did these become so popular with young adults? And so this is a quote that I'm going to read from this article that I will also link in the show notes. But it says, one component to the relativity of young adult dystopian literature is that they are written in a teenager's perspective, which is unusual for traditional literature. Young adults with the drama and the hormones are trying to figure out who they are and what they want to be in life. With dystopian novels, the character is perceived as someone with independence and ambition. And so I think, something we've talked about before is like young people don't necessarily feel like they have a voice. They feel like they are being controlled. They feel like they have no outlets. And so those feelings, although the environments they're in or the situations that the characters are in might be more extreme, I feel like those feelings can at least be understood of like feeling like you have no control over your life or, like there's so much drama going on. You can kind of feel safe in a dystopian world. Um, so do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that's true on multiple levels.
Hmm.
It's like the superficial things that make life hard for a teenager, but then there's the very real things like not being able to vote, but
Hmm.
then at the same time, like being in high school every day, wondering like if their lives may be at stake because of the threat of gun violence.
Yeah.
There are like really very real things that young people are experiencing, like for instance, climate change,
Yeah.
like having people of like several generations older than them being the main decision makers about environmental
Yeah.
policy, but them not having to actually reap the consequences of it.
Yeah.
And, feeling like, okay, this is out of my control. So I don't know, as I was just thinking about this, like, is dystopian literature almost a way of kind of like role playing
Mm.
what that struggle would look like if the protagonist ended up victorious in the end. Like if you got to Katniss
Yeah.
Everdeen your way to like, ending Mitch McConnell. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Like
No, yeah, totally.
this is a way to like play out what we'd like to see actually happen in real life because like especially with the environmental example,
Yeah.
like several of the dystopian novels that we're going to mention later in the episode are centered around environmental catastrophe.
Hmm.
And
It's true.
I think it's a way of like, it's centering young people because young people are the people who are going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
The catastrophe or like the problems that are being made by older people. And that's why a lot of times the main characters of dystopian novels are teenage girls.
Yeah, totally. And I think something in some of these articles that came up was like kind of like you're saying, it deals with these real fears that people have about maybe society or government or the world, but it is more black and white. Like in the Hunger Games example, obviously the government is evil. They're making children murder each other. Like it's very clear, and
Yeah, they remove the nuance.
yes, exactly. There is no nuance. But this kid, I mean, Katniss is what, like 16 when the books start, or, very young. She's able to be the catalyst to kind of overthrow this evil government. So it's just very black and white, but also empowering to kids. And I was thinking, can we connect the popularity of these dystopian novels when we were younger and when, those younger than us were younger to the increased political activism of Gen Z? Yes, I'm going to say yes. But I think you're right. It is kind of like a cosplay, like, hey, kids can be the impetus for change. They can bring about that change in their society. And I think that's a good thing to read as a kid to, embrace that message of like, yeah, I might be young, but I might be the person that could bring about change. I mean, look at Greta Thunberg, or how do you pronounce her last name? I think that's close.
Thunberg, I
Thunberg.
think. Yeah.
So like someone like that, that is kind of like the Katniss Everdeen of real life, of someone who's like, I don't care how old I am, I can make a
Hmm.
difference and be this kind of thing that brings about change. Catalyst. That is the word I've been searching for. Like a
Yeah,
catalyst for change. So yeah.
totally. And to compare our own generation with Gen Z, like, I think so. Thinking about something that millennials, and we're younger millennials, but that the millennials are really obsessed with is Harry Potter. And this idea of like overcoming these racist, Nazi like uh wizards or whatever. Like we got really wrapped up in that, but didn't actually take it the step farther of like turning that into real life activism,
Yeah.
where Gen Z has taken like these models in media of like stepping up to the big bad and then actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really have an answer to that, but maybe a conversation for another
Sure.
day. Like what separates? What's the
Yeah.
difference?
And I'm not saying that dystopian novels are the only reason that Gen Z
Yeah, yeah, totally.
are more
Totally,
politically active.
totally.
But I do think like that has to have like if those are the role models you're reading about, like that has to impact you somehow. If you're young and you're impressionable and these are the things you're reading, like I think that must have some impact.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I mean, we kind of danced around it, but I think one of the big ones that is really accessible for most people, know about it in some way, is The Hunger Games. So maybe we should start there, kind of talking about the model for the
Yes.
modern dystopian novel.
Yes, the modern, yes, the new era of dystopian novels I feel like was ushered in, or maybe reached its fever pitch. Like I think there were some that came before,
Hmm.
some that came after, but none maybe as successful as the Hunger Games. Do you remember like reading these for the first time?
I didn't read like the first and second one. I was a little delayed
Hmm.
reading them. Like I didn't read them right when they were released, but I did read them before the movies came out.
Yeah.
But I read Mockingjay. Like I went and I got it at Barnes and Noble like when it was released, and I stayed up all night reading it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
which I didn't plan to do, but I just got like so wrapped up in it. Um, so yeah, I loved the Hunger Games. Those were we may have to do a whole
We
episode on the
definitely
Hunger
do.
Games, but I was like as far as like the cultness of it, like
Yes.
this when I was in middle school, like the cult book that I read was Twilight, and when I read Hunger Games, that was in high school.
Mhm.
So, I just had a different experience reading it. I felt like I kind of just got sucked into it, and I was closer to the age of
Yeah.
Katniss when I read the book, so I felt more like kinship with her. What about you?
Yes, I remember this is one of the few books I feel like I remember vividly because I had a friend named Abby in my drama class. We were in theater together in middle school. And when the first book came, like she was an early adopter of these books because when the first one came out, she recommended it to me and was like, you have to read this book. And so I remember reading it from her. So I definitely think it must have just come out. I think I got the first two as they were being released because, like, yeah, she was an influencer to me. But similar to you, I remember I got so sucked in and it was kind of different than the Twilight because Twilight was again, I was younger, like this was probably 8th grade or so, so it was a little on the older middle school side. But I just felt yeah, it was like so empowering, so I don't know, and they're a little shorter, so you could read them so fast. So I get that feeling of like staying up all night read them, but they were a
Yeah, and
viral hit.
when the movies came out, it was like everyone was doing their hair like
Yes.
Katniss. And then like my freshman year of college, we did this thing at the college that we went to called Dorm Wars, and my dorm's theme for my freshman year was Hunger Games.
Uh-huh.
And we all like dressed like Katniss, we did braids, and like one of like the cheers that we did was like the Mockingjay
Yes.
thing symbol. And like we did this whole like opening dance at the end. That was like it was like to Alicia Keys, "That girl is on
Uh-huh.
fire."
Amazing.
I mean, it was like a total
It
cultural
was.
takeover.
It was.
But like just to pause, but just let it sink in. Like the thing that was a total cultural takeover was the story of a girl who gets sent to an arena to fight to the death against other children
Yeah.
at the command
It's
of the
bleak.
government.
It's very bleak.
So why did that catch on?
I don't
It
know.
wasn't just the romance. It couldn't have just been the romance
Yeah.
element.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think something I just briefly skimmed this article before we started recording, but it was actually I think made a really good point, but the author was saying like people tried to replicate the success of Hunger Games, but something the Hunger Games did was like really spent a lot of time like humanizing Katniss. It wasn't just like so many other ones they focused on this scenario they were in or the plot, but they didn't give
Hmm.
as much credit to like the feelings. But Katniss like
Mm.
she did have so many emotions. She was unsure. She wasn't like I'm a badass and I'm going to be the Mockingjay. She
Hmm.
was like no, I don't really want to do this, but like I have to for my family or for PETA or for like whatever reason. And so I think like the Hunger Games was so well done in that aspect of like really spending a lot of time on Katniss as a human being and her feelings. And you could feel like she's not just born like this. Like this is something, that she had to do and what that would be
She's just
like.
normal.
Yeah, very normal.
And I think what helped is also that the Hunger Games books are written from her point of view.
Yeah.
So you're getting to see the whole thing through her eyes. But it does kind of occur to me when I watch it back now through an adult lens, like it is pretty gruesome.
It
To me,
is.
when I was a teenager and I was reading it, I was like, oh, I didn't even think of it as being gruesome. I don't
Yes.
know why that didn't click that like what was
This
happening
is
in the books
horrifying.
was like extremely savage and
Yeah.
traumatizing, but like
No.
it, but at the same time, like to kind of just tie into the greater like political landscape of and
Hmm.
like merging with dystopian books, like what she went through was extremely traumatizing. And a lot of the things that are being played out to their like eventual end in dystopian novels start as things that are actually traumatizing to
Yeah.
actual young people now.
Yeah.
So maybe that's another reason that it like gripped on so hard.
Definitely.
Is because like you may feel that way about some things in your own
Yeah.
life.
Totally. And I think something else that I think helped The Hunger Games a lot was that the movie adaptations were so well done and so good and genuinely like I think even if you didn't read the books at all, you could really love the movies. Like they were just that well done. And so I think that helped propel its fame even further because like honestly, let's be real, the first Twilight movie is good in a bad
Trash.
way or like bad in
It's
a good way. Like,
yeah,
but
it's hot
if
garbage.
you didn't already love the series and you saw that, like you might just be like, okay, or if you're not the target demographic. But I do think anyone can love the Hunger Games, and I think that definitely helped with how well done the movies were. I think that kind of, shot it to the next level.
And I think the broader appeal, like it centers a young girl that Katniss Everdeen is the main character, but it appeals to more than just young girls. I think there's
Yeah,
like a wider audience who can enjoy the books.
right.
It's not like, and the romance, I think I mentioned this in the Twilight episode, but the romance is tangential to the main story.
Yes.
It's not just, it's like an action book with romance. It's not
Yeah,
just a
I was gonna
romance.
say I think that helps a lot too because the romance part, like if you're not into romance, it's such a, honestly, you could take it out, but obviously that's what a lot of people focus on is the Team Pete, Team Gale, but I think you're right. Like it has a lot more to offer. It's about family, it's about war, it's about, a government overthrowing a violent government, you know. And I think something that's also interesting is anytime obviously it's a bit different than like Hogwarts houses, but like the different districts having like their own personalities. I feel like people could be like, "Oh, well, I'm from district, 8. Well, I'm from district 2, Like I feel like that kind of is a similar thing that people can, buy into.
So the reason we started with this conversation talking about Hunger Games is because shortly in the 2010s, shortly after the Hunger Games rose to a ton of fame,
Hmm.
there was a peppering of other dystopian YA
So
series
many.
that came out, including Divergent, which,
Hmm.
speaking of movie adaptations, those are hot
Yeah.
garbage in my opinion.
And speaking of dorm wars, Divergent was my theme my freshman year. So you can
Oh
see
my
the trickle
gosh!
down effect 'cause we're 1 year apart in school. So that
Did you guys win?
we won that year. Yes.
We won too.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was such a good feeling. But yeah, it was like the Hunger Games was peaking and then Divergent came right after that. So yeah, that was right about that time. So yes.
So Divergent came out, which was which the like broad strokes is about a society where when teenagers come of age, they are separated into different factions of their society based on what skills come to the top. And the main character is a young girl who is a teenage girl who is divergent, which means she doesn't fit the mold.
And that's like
And
super dangerous. So like she has to
yeah,
hide it.
and there's a romance component to that one.
Yes.
There's three books: Divergent, Insurgent, and Allegiant, I think.
That was it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Another book that series that came after was Delirium.
Oh man, yeah. We loved this book series. I remember
We
like
did.
the two of us specifically like texting about it. So that was one where
It was
love was
like
like illegal and you had to get vaccinated against falling in love, but then somehow the main character falls in love with two guys and I don't remember what happens after
yeah,
that.
it's like a love triangle. It's kind of cloudy to me now, and I can't necessarily endorse it as good, but I remember I ate
Yes.
that shit up.
I have been thinking about rereading that series because all I can remember from it was that it was like the one love triangle book where I felt like I didn't know who she was going to end up with at the end. Like I felt like so many other books it was so clear, but this one I remember thinking like I genuinely do not know which way it's going to go. So,
I
I'm going to
cannot
reread it.
remember a single thing about it. I can't remember a single thing about it except for they give you vaccinated
Yes.
against love, and they
Yes.
call love delirium.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
It's like a disease.
so
Yeah. And then Matched. I feel like we liked that one too.
Yeah, Matched by Ali Condi. Um, God, what was the premise of that one again? It was like the government matched
Yeah, like
you
arranged
with
marriages.
somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you find out on a certain day or something that who you're going to be matched to in like a ceremony, and then but I think she falls in love with someone who she's not matched with, maybe. And some people don't get
yeah.
matched and then they're like exiled from society, something like that.
So you can see why these aren't as successful
Yeah.
as the Hunger Games
Yeah.
because they're like honing in on one component,
Sure.
but they're not doing everything as well,
Yes.
in my opinion.
Yes.
We love them though.
Yes. And who knows? I might be rereading one of them soon.
Yeah. And so just to hit on quickly, other
Mhm.
big dystopian names that had on-screen adaptations, but in TV form,
Mhm.
obviously The Handmaid's Tale, a dystopian novel about a far-right religious group taking over the United States
Huh,
and
interesting.
enslaving women to do various roles, including serve as handmaids. Most people have some sort of knowledge about that.
Yeah.
And then also Station 11. Do you want to give a rundown of Station 11?
Station 11 is like if COVID-19 was like 99% deadly instead of like 1%. So it's a pandemic, a flu pandemic suddenly breaks out, kind of centered, I think, overseas and then comes to the US. And basically, I think it's like 98 or 99% of people will die. A few people have some kind of, genetic predisposition to be immune. And so it kind of takes place, immediately in the time of the outbreak somewhat, and then mostly flashes forward to kind of, many years later, and where those characters kind of end up in this post-apocalyptic, post-death society. So I think this is also both of these are really great. I've never read The Handmaid's Tale, but I did read Station 11. But I think both are great TV adaptations. I feel like TV is the future for book adaptations,
Hmm.
personally. And so I think even if you haven't read these books, I feel like The Handmaid's Tale kind of fell off a little, but Station 11 is a great adaptation.
Yeah. So the Station 11, the TV adaptation, there are some pretty big changes
Mhm,
from the
mhm.
book. They're really good changes, I think, that make it better on screen.
Yeah.
But the book is great. There's like kind of going back to how we started this episode talking about the different components of a dystopian novel. We have like a biological threat, obviously
Mhm,
the flu pandemic, and then we also have like a smattering of like some sort of religious
mhm,
uprising,
mhm,
kind of cult stuff baking. And then like because of the dire like economic conditions after like 80% of the world dies, um, there's like a lot of like robbing, danger, like
mhm.
kind of amongst the people that remain.
Yeah.
That one also the main character is also a young woman.
Mhm.
um, but it's really good.
It's really good.
That
Either way you
I would highly
consume
recommend
it.
that.
Yeah, it's quite good.
So Emily, should we maybe talk about a few dystopian novels we recommend that maybe some people aren't as familiar with?
Yes. Would you like me to go first?
Sure. Why don't you go first, and then we can do a little
Okay.
sync.
I'm not gonna say I wholeheartedly recommend these, but these are some that I enjoyed in my youth that I do think are, maybe less familiar. So the first one, I think about this one a lot. It's called True Sight by David Staller. This was a book series, I think, that I read a lot as a kid. And I don't know why I loved it so much, but it's a world where everyone is kind of forced to be blind, and kind of the implications that come with that. I think like it's like another planet or something, and it was started originally by blind people who like believed that being blind was a superior way to live, but of course there's government overreaching. There's a lot of issues, like maybe not everyone is blind. I don't remember, but that is one that I think that was like I was just trying to think like what's the first ever dystopian book you remember reading. That one definitely is one of those early ones. So maybe good for early readers. A series I just read again for the first time last year was Life as We Knew It by Susan Beth Pfeffer. Um, I remembered reading this book as a kid, and then I remembered that there had been more books after it, but I never read the rest of the series. So that made me want to go back and read it from the beginning so I could figure out what happened in the end. And so this is a book series where basically an asteroid hits the Earth and no, hits the moon, sorry, and pushes it way closer to Earth. And so like there's crazy volcanoes, tides rising, like just a lot of natural disaster events that happen because of the displacement of the moon. And so it's kind of like a girl's diaries, and her like she decides to start keeping a diary right before this happens, and she writes in it almost every day. And so it's I think this was a good series for like really younger readers, like maybe late elementary, early middle. It's like very appropriate for them. I've realized rereading it, but it's kind of interesting. So I think if you have a young reader, this would be good for them. There's 4 books in the series. Um, maybe it jumps the shark a little in the 4th one, but the first 3 are really good. And then the last one I loved was Uglies by Scott Westerfield. I feel like this had a moment. It actually came out before Hunger Games. So I feel like this was maybe like the pre-tending of the field so that Hunger Games could grow and flourish. But if you've never read those books, it's basically set in this society where I think, when you come of age, I don't remember if it was like 16 or 18, but at a certain point, you can get these, and everyone chooses to get these surgeries to become pretty. And so you're kind of
That's right.
separated into, I know, I've kind of forgotten all this, but I loved the series. So you're kind of
Yeah.
separated into the uglies and the pretties. And so then once you become pretty, you can like go into the city and you have like an amazing life. I remember, I think there is a piece of technology in this series where like you could just order anything on your little tablet and they would like make it appear in your home instantly. I don't know if I'm misremembering that, but I always thought that would be so cool if you could like, put the exact meal you wanted and it would just instantly like hologram or
It's
your
like in Phil of the
outfit.
Future
Yes, the
when they
spray
have the
meals.
spray.
Yes, it was just like that. So, yeah, this is basically just about what you go through all this to become pretty. And I also think there was something about like the surgery makes you dumber or it does something to your brain. So, anyways, the main character is also a girl in this one. I think there's a lot of main girl characters. Honestly, the True Sight one has a boy main character, but most of these I'd rather read about a girl. So that's why I think we
Same.
talk about so many girl main characters. And I feel like most of them are
Yeah.
about girls. So I think that's
Yeah.
just the genre. Okay, those are my
Maybe it's
3 that
because
I loved as a kid. So
maybe it's because in the eventual world that ends up being a dystopia, the boys made it that way.
yeah, you're probably right.
Anyways, okay, a couple that I have read that are a little bit less mainstream. First is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So, the big bad in this book is climate change, and also there is a like disease that has been wiping out a lot of people. But the main character is Lauren, a teenage girl who is forced to leave her home in Southern California due to climate change. And so she heads north to try and find water and a job and a better life, risking robbers, arsonists, wildfires, and other people who, because of the conditions of the world, have been driven to poverty and are therefore there's increased violence and desperation among the people that are living on the West Coast. So she travels from Southern California northbound while also starting a cult. She's gathering people along the way in her like group of travelers, and she's starting like her own belief system called Earthseed. And this one is so interesting because it's not really a YA novel. This is something for adults. There's some adult content in this book, including like some sexual things. But anyways, it is an adult book. But it's really interesting to think through that lens. Like, okay, so like somebody who's living in a dystopia, like I kind of get why you would want to start a cult because like
Like,
people
why
are
not?
desperate for
Yeah.
things. And so, as someone who's fascinated by the subject of cults, I enjoyed this. It was a little like it's not really an upper. This is more of a downer. So read this when you're not in an upper mood. Um, but Octavia Butler is brilliant, and this is the first of a series of books about Lauren, the main character. I have not finished the series. I don't know if I intend to, but that is a dystopian novel. And then another, which this is not really a hot take, The Giver by Lois Lowry is obviously a very
Yes.
famous.
I feel like we
Um,
couldn't do this episode without talking about The Giver. I feel like
yeah.
The Giver is a, elementary school gateway drug into dystopian literature.
Yeah, and even as an adult, I mean, the book is like, I mean, you guys can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but it's like an inch thick. Like, it's not a long book, but it's so, like, full of things to talk about for being so, like, maybe it wins the award for, like, least amount of pages, most amount of,
Yes.
like, essays written. But there is a film adaptation of this. It sucks. I don't recommend, but I read The Giver for class in middle school, and it was like the first book that I read that really got me thinking critically about like society and culture and the world. Like it was the first really like substantive um, book I read.
Definitely.
It was published in 1993, and for those who don't know, The Giver is about a society that at first appears to be a utopia because people can't feel pain or sadness. There's no comparison between others. The world is literally in black and white. But as the book progresses, it's revealed to be a dystopia. So the basic idea is all the young people in the society are assigned jobs by the government when they turn like 12, I think. And the main character, Jonas, so here's a boy main character, when he becomes of age, he's assigned the role of the giver. And he learns from the current giver that the giver is responsible for holding basically all of the world's feelings, including love, happiness, joy, pain, seeing colors, experiencing and knowing what war is, like everything. And it kind of gets you thinking about like the ethics of keeping pain from people and what pain can teach you, and what he does with all the knowledge that he gains. I love it. It's like to this day one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah, super amazing, impacting. Like I still remember the feeling of reading it for the first time. Like I feel like it makes such a big impact on you when your brain is so like tiny and underdeveloped, and then you read that and you're like, "Whoa, I never thought about this stuff before." So
It's like the literal feeling of your eyes opening
yes,
and thinking about like how
absolutely.
you can't really have joy without pain.
Yeah,
Like you can't really have like happiness without sadness.
yeah, yeah.
And the role that pain plays in the world. Anyways, it's
So good.
the best one on the list for sure.
Yeah. So my question is, if you had to live in a dystopian world,
Oh,
which one would you
Jesus.
pick and why?
Okay, it would not be The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, I would be concerned for
No.
your safety if you got that.
Um,
I'm gonna go with matched because, like, what's so bad about arranged marriage? Like, if
okay.
I think there was some other sinister stuff going on, but at the end of the day, like, is that really like you could be in a scenario where you have to murder other children, or where you're, literally just a breeding machine, or where 99% of the world died. Arranged marriage happens in a lot of places in the world. Like, it's not that bad,
Yeah. Unless I'm forgetting some sort of like cultural genocide or something.
Yeah,
I don't remember
I do
that,
think
but
there was like work camps, where you had to go if you were like a detractor.
okay.
So maybe that would be good,
I
but
mean, okay,
oh my
keeping in
god,
mind by like
this book is
by
set in
virtue of
Utah.
the Utah? Oh, well.
I'm sorry, I'm just on Wikipedia. Yeah, so the outer provinces are filled with aberrations.
That's
Mhm.
right.
So there was,
Aberrations.
and it's all teenage boys. So
That are aberrations?
yeah, so that part's not
What
great,
can I
but
remember?
I think I would still pick to live in that world. Of all of these, what about you?
Well, I would probably pick that one too, but just to be different and to add some texture to
Thank
this
you.
conversation, I would probably pick Station 11
Hmm.
because I feel like if you survive,
Hmm.
then you kind of have the opportunity to like be creative, explore nature. You can join the theater troupe that the main character, I can't remember her name right now. What's her name?
Yeah. I can't remember her name.
Okay,
Kristen,
hold on,
maybe?
it's gonna bug me. Kirsten.
Kirsten. Okay,
Yeah, that Kirsten is in.
yeah.
Like you could find a gang of people to hang out with, and like after, like if you survive the pandemic, like there is some risk of danger to your life
Yeah.
by like robbers and extremists and stuff, but like you could
But
generally
like
kind of
that's
vibe.
her story. Like it feels like most of the rest of the universe was just kind of like vibing in little colonies. Like if you weren't in that part of the world where the cult was, and like you could have probably just been in like coastal Maine and like have a nice life. So maybe I agree with you.
Gosh, now that I'm thinking about that, the thing that like made me the most emotional when I was reading that book was the Museum of Humanity,
Yeah.
where like this one guy like collects like cell phones, laptops, like
Yeah.
makeup compacts, like little things
Uh-huh.
just like from normal everyday life. And then it's like where young people who were born post the pandemic learn about what
Yeah.
humanity was.
Yeah.
That made me emotional.
No, literally today I was picking up trash and I was thinking about that same thing.
For
It was like if all of
for like a volunteering
yeah,
thing.
yeah. That's for fun. Sorry. Thank you. So I was cleaning up the streets and I was thinking about that. Like if all of humanity died, like here's a can of beer and like a granola bar and a hair tie, like stuff like that. It was just, like it's kind of like looking at fossils, I guess, but it was just interesting. But I was thinking for some reason, I guess dystopian's on the mind. So I think stuff like that is interesting, like the things that are left behind if society collapses. So, anyways,
Mm,
Station 11 is great.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, read Station 11 in The Giver. Okay, so how about this? I think over maybe the last couple of years, or since 2020 or 2016, it's felt like we're getting closer and closer. There's been moments where it feels like we're in a dystopian novel.
sure.
Do you feel that dystopians have fallen off a little bit? And if they have, what has risen to take its place?
Yeah, I kind of feel like they have, but then I think they're poised to make a comeback. And here's why. First of all, I've seen this book going around, but it's called The Grace Year. I've actually read it as well, but I've seen it going around TikTok. It's a dystopian. It's very reminiscent of a lot of these books. So I won't go too much into it, but I think it's a good read if you enjoyed The Hunger Games as a kid. And anyways, it's a little more adult though. Like it's definitely more gruesomely violent and a little more adult theme. So I think it's kind of the grown up version. Um, so I do think it's poised to make a comeback because of the dystopian times we live in. I feel like we've reached the point where now, things are, like Four Seasons total landscaping. Like there's things to laugh at. It's not like it's not like scary sometimes anymore. Like it definitely still is
Hmm.
scary. Like, climate change may kill us all, but there's also comedy. So I think it's poised to make a comeback, much like it thrived under, the USSR, Soviet Russia, the Cold War regime. I feel like it can do that as well in this world we live in. But I did also pose the idea that maybe the crime, thriller, murder, mystery genre has kind of replaced dystopian novels. Um, among especially women our age, and I think it comes from the same place of like I think being like sometimes when your life feels out of control, you can read that and feel like, well, that would never happen to me, or like you can kind of feel like what it would feel like to solve a mystery or like reveal the twists, and then it's over and it's resolved. So I feel like it's kind of the same thing of like cosplaying these drastic scenarios that aren't happening to like deal with the things that are.
It's like the feeling of closure after something really bad has happened.
Yes.
Like as a society, we have not processed COVID. We have not processed the mass death of
Surely
that. Like
not.
we have not processed the tragedy, and because we don't want to think about it anymore, and like rightfully so. But like there's a lot of things in life, in real life, we don't get closure to that
Yeah.
we just have to like reckon within ourselves. But in a book,
Hmm.
you almost always get closure.
Yeah, because it's
And you
like,
almost always get
yeah.
like, okay, someone died, but at the end of this book there was justice. Like
Yes.
we figure out who the killer was, and
Yes.
there's someone to blame, and there's something to make sense of the mess. When in real life, you don't always get that. Like you really seldom get that
Yes. You
sense
don't get that
of
justice and not
finality.
closure. No,
Yeah.
literally, I just read this book and it was terrible. I don't need to say the name. I don't like to do bad reviews, but I'm gonna say it. It's called The Perfect Marriage. And um but in it there is a murder, and within like a few weeks the murder goes to trial. The person Okay, I'm spoiling this whole thing now. The person's convicted, and within 11
If you
years.
don't want to hear spoilers,
Yeah.
if you don't want to hear
Yeah.
spoilers, skip ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I don't recommend this book, to be honest, but within 11 years, with no appeals, the supposed murderer is, murdered, uh, executed, sorry, the death penalty, which is insane. And I was just reading this, like, literally, I'm a true crime person, and I'm trying to be reformed because I think it's probably not good for you. But um, I followed some crimes. There is no world in which a murder case goes to trial in 11 weeks. The person is convicted, they get the death
And
penalty,
there's
and
no
they don't
appeals.
appeal it. None
You
of
don't
that
even
is real.
try.
There was a lot of other problems with the book. But I think it was a page turner, and I think people like it because, in real life, like you said, murders aren't really solved. Like, the police are really bad at it, to be honest with you. Look up those statistics. And like, trials don't always give you the closure you want, like, that's a big example. But like you said, like, people sometimes just die, like, you lose people, or like even more mundane, like you saw something weird, or like you heard a bit of gossip and you never know the true story behind what you heard. Like, you never, in so much in life, you don't get that closure. Things just happen. And so I think these thrillers and the dystopians, like in the end of the books, what do you want to happen? And what so often happens? They overthrow the government, or like they get out, or like they escape, or they figure out what's going on. And so I think it is kind of like the same feeling of like, there's mystery, there's tension, but by the end of the book, you feel like you got the closure. Even if it leaves you reeling, you still know what happened. So I think, in that sense, it has replaced the dystopians a little bit, for the similar vibes.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I want someone smarter than us to like do a whole like paper on that. Another fun little question. So can you think of any books that aren't dystopian but maybe should be?
I feel like you came up with some great examples, so just
I
say
did.
them.
I'll do the punchline to my own joke. I
Yeah.
said Art of the Deal by Donald Trump and If I Did It by O.J. Simpson.
Yes. Which should not exist. And
But also just like any memoir that's like crazy.
yes.
Some of these memoirs out here,
Yes.
like this should be dystopian. This is
Yes.
crazy.
And
The
some
stuff
of
you
them,
guys have lived through.
it's that same thing. Like, some of them you're like, well, I read this and you gave me nothing. But some of them you're like, wow, they gave me the answers I was looking for. Like, now I feel like I know
Yeah.
what was really going on with them or whatever. So
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about dystopian literature before we wrap this conversation?
I was just thinking, I want them to make a comeback. If you have suggestions for like more recent, more adult, or even YA. I still love YA books, but dystopian books that are good, like, definitely comment them on our post about this episode, because this, I really think I might go reread Delirium, and I'll report back to you guys. But I really, now after doing this episode, I'm like, oh, I love those books. So
Maybe we should do a reading rewind on Delirium.
honestly, maybe we should. If you want
Maybe
us
we
to do
should.
that, leave us a 5-star review and tell us you want us to do
Ah,
that.
that's funny.
Thank you.
All
Okay.
right.
So what have you been reading lately? Segue.
Well, I read something good. I read A Non Please by Dumois, which was published in December. I listened to it on audiobook, and I still would recommend the book, but I would not listen to it on audio because I think the narrator has some really annoying tics, and she pronounces some things like completely wrong
Mm,
that it just drives you
that is
crazy.
really
But
annoying.
the reason so I heard about this book on an episode of oh my God, what's the name of that podcast that we love about gossip?
Oh, normal gossip.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm obsessed with normal gossip. I can't remember. Go listen to that.
Yes.
But I heard about this book from an episode of Normal Gossip.
Yes.
And I was like halfway listening, so I thought that this was nonfiction. So I was like, oh, I'll get it on an audiobook
Hmm.
from Libby. But it was fiction, and it came off of hold, and I
Okay.
had it on audiobook. Anyway, long way to say. This is like the semi-true story of how Demois was started.
Hmm.
It's like a fictionalized story of the main character. Her name is Cricket, and she works for this like celebrity stylist a la Devil Wears Prada vibes, very much like in that world, like horrible Godzilla type boss who's like really mean and abusive. And through her line of work and through her friends, she gets some anonymous tips about celebrities, and she starts a celebrity gossip account called Demois. And it's the story of like how she makes this little hobby into like a real thing. There's a little bit of romance. There's like, hijinks. There's a risk of her getting found out. And it is a ton of fun. It's fun, quick, light. Highly recommend. It's funny. It's like very 2023. Like it is, it discusses some celebrity stuff like based off of real celebrities and real Demois tips that have happened in like the last year. So now would be a great time to read it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I highly
I
recommend.
have this on hold per your recommendation, and I'm excited to read it. I just think, imagine like accidentally starting Demois. And then now you have so many followers, real celebs are DMing you, like, you kind of just fall into these things. But anyways, it sounds super good. Okay,
Yeah.
so mine, actually, I decided to recommend or to recap this book because I also do not recommend the audiobook, and I saw your note on that. I'm like, okay, let me talk about this. But it's called The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekanen, something close to that. And I read this book. I decided to pick it up because it's like a thriller. It had good reviews, and I really like The Golden Couple, which is by the same duo. I
Yeah.
read that last year, and it's really good. So
Yeah, I did too.
yeah. So I was like, well, I'm sure I'll like this as well. But I'm trying not to spoil anything, but there is like a big twist that is completely undermined by the audiobook narration. Like, if I was reading it, I think I would have gotten the twist. Listening to the audiobook, I was so confused. I had to stop listening and go read spoiler reviews so that I could understand what was going on. And
Come on. Come on.
yes,
I hate
I
that.
hated it as well. And it's like, come on. Like, yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but I just will say, don't listen to the audiobook because it's kind of like, wait, I thought I didn't get that first impact of the twist. But there are other twists that I got. So basically it follows, the main character is Vanessa, and she was previously married to a man named Richard, and he is about to get remarried to a younger woman, and it kind of follows her trying to stop that wedding. It's very suspenseful. There's a lot of twists. There's one final twist at the end that really did catch me off guard. Didn't see it coming. I thought all the twists were revealed, and there was one more. I didn't like it at first because of that one issue with the audiobook. But by the end, I did really enjoy it. And I think, like I said, I've been kind of, the first of the year, I was struggling to get back into like a good habit around reading and going back to work and just feeling like I just couldn't get into the rhythm that I was in. So I've been reading a lot of these thrillers because that is my go-to genre. Like, I think everyone has one where you're like, I know if I read this type of book, some people might be a romance or YA fiction, dystopians even. But everyone has one. So for me, it's thrillers. And so I've been trying to read a lot of like short ones, but this one was it's definitely probably the best one I've read of the ones I've read, which haven't been the best, but this one was pretty good. I just will say, please do not listen to the audiobook because I also wish I hadn't.
Yeah, as a general rule of thumb, like, do a little research, find out, did the author narrate it? If the author didn't, maybe consider listening to an excerpt first.
Yes.
I don't know, because sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes
Yes.
it sounds like a commercial for a Toyota.
But some are also some are like, what? This is so bland, but then some are amazing because you really feel like they embody the character. That's what I prefer rather than someone who just reads it like super flat. I prefer when they're like reading it as if they were the character or they change their voice and stuff. I feel like that's cool. So, anyways, that's it.
Well, great conversation. And as a reminder, everybody, go read Spare. Get ready for our next episode.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Bye.